Hey, it's Charlie Ray, and welcome back to my channel. So I wanted to make a small pouch that I could put a couple of crochet needles and maybe something to write with to go with me when I'm headed out. And I'm taking a project with me just in case I have time to work on it while I'm out. So I sketched up a couple of ideas and decided to go with the second one. I grabbed just a few worsted weight yarns that I thought looked cute together, and I got started on my project. Now, I'm not using a pattern for this, so I'm essentially just making a rectangle that I'm folding over. So I just want to make sure that it's wide enough to fit my needles without a whole bunch of extra space. And since the needles are similar in size to a pencil or pen, it should work fine for both. Yep, my projects are piling up on me just a little bit, but that's for another video. For now, let's get to these stripes. So I originally planned to do one yellow stripe, one white stripe, and have them both be the same width. But while I was working on this, I decided to make the white stripe a little bit smaller, so I ended up giving it just 2 stitches, half of the 4 that I used for the yellow. Okay, so now that the stripes are done, I decided to make the bottom half of the front just plain blue. I also noticed that because I was doing some stitching on different days, my gauge was different. So the top part is a little tighter than what I was stitching today or on this day. And I decided it was fine because it was just a little quick thing for myself. So I finished off the front. I try to keep my crochet as neat as I can, but sometimes it gets a little messy. I am not going to bother to weave in these ends because I'm going to be covering this with a piece of felt for the inside. But I did decide to add some green striping across the long way of the pouch. So I wanted to have it be like a dashed line, but then when I got to this part, I think it maybe wasn't wide enough because it was just looking a little, I don't know, just funky, not even. So I ended up deciding to just pull that out and just go ahead and add a wider or longer dash. But first I did just like a quick little test one because I wanted to see if that was gonna look any better or if I should just pull the whole thing out and leave it out. But when I looked at it, I thought that that would be more like what I was looking for. So I just went ahead and pulled it out and started over. I was liking this dash line much better, and when I got to the end, I didn't cut it and start over. I just went right into the next line, just finding little ways to keep it quick and easy for myself. Again, I am just putting felt on the inside of this, so that doesn't matter having these little ties and strings and things going on the inside. So I folded it in half in order to find the middle and placed a couple of stitch markers on the top and the bottom so that I would know where to put the buttonhole and the button. I tried to film when I actually made the button, but I promise you it was a steaming hot mess. So I decided to cut that out and just tell you that I simply made a circle with a magic ring out of the green, and then I stitched around the outside of the circle and tightened that up to pull it into kind of a ball type shape. I may try to show something like that on another video if I'm doing a quick button and I'm not using a store-bought button. For the loop, I just made a few stitches and that were attached to the top, made sure that it fit around the button, and then I went back over it with a single crochet, and with the last stitch I stitched back into the top of the pouch, and then I tied that off. And again, that's just gonna get tucked right in behind the felt, and that was good enough for the button closure for this bag for me. Sticking with the idea of not using any type of pattern and keeping this free form, I just kind of placed it on top of a piece of felt and cut out a square to use for the inside. It did not come out perfectly, but it's very usable. I was trying to decide between a blue thread or a white thread to sew this on, but I went ahead and went with the blue because if it shows on the outside, at least it will be blue and not just random white stitches on the blue yarn. So I'm going to start in this corner over here, and I'm going to try to sew a little bit inside of the felt so that I can still crochet the sides together. As you can see, there's a little bit more felt here than I needed, but I went ahead and stitched it in, and when I did, it ended up being a little bit bunched, but that's okay. Also, I'm still leaving this string on to sew this side up, and I'll just add one for this side. I think this will be the last steps of this, is sewing on the felt and sewing up the sides, and then I'll be done, I think. So at this point I was just sewing along, minding my own business, when someone came and interrupted me, and I stabbed myself in the thumb with the needle. Unpleasant. So be careful, guys, when you're using a sharp needle. I've sewn in the felt on the inside. I have my little loop closure here, my little button here. So the next thing I'm going to do is use this tail to sew, to crochet together the sides, and I think that will be the last step. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that done. So now I'll just match that up to there and sew along this side, crochet along this side. Yay. Okay, so as I'm pulling through this last portion, I'm just going to tie that off, and it looks okay on the inside. I'm a little less concerned about the inside than I am the outside. So let me just push that open. And so yes, this is how it looks on the outside. I can take this off. Oh, this was fun. This was fun for like not having to have a pattern. So you do see a little bit of the stitching, the blue stitching on the inside. That does not bother me at all. I'm going to let me see. I'm going to weave this in and cut this off. So that is done. So let me do the other side, and I will be right back after these messages. I'll be right back. Okay. So for now, I'm just going to leave it like this, and this will be how I can carry around a few crochet needles really quickly. Let's put the highlighter back in there. I probably should have made this a little bigger, but honestly, usually I'm just carrying around just this many, like 1 or 2 needles, and so I think it's just the right size for what I need it for. But you may want more space, and I actually think maybe I'll make like a bigger one. Maybe one of my Granny Jenny projects do one with granny squares. Anyway, that's about all I have for this video. If you would like to see my Granny Jenny projects coming up in January, or some other projects that I'll be doing throughout the month of September, please click that subscribe button. Thanks for stopping by. Bye.